Call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors? Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Miss Kelly?
Yes.
Miss Allen? Mr. Allen, I'm sorry.
My wife thanks you. Yes. Next item will be a statement by our Board Vice President, Cheryl Kelly.
As we begin this meeting, let us pause for a 60-second, a moment of silence to reflect, meditate, pray, or engage in other silent activity. Okay.
Next item will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Will be led by Corina Dorgillo.
Hello. At this moment, please stand, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we will continue with the Oklahoma Pledge. I salute the flag of the state of Oklahoma, it symbols of peace, unite all people. Thank you. You may take a seat.
Corina, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience here at Broken Arrow, everything about you?
Hi, my name is Karina Gordillo, first of all, and I am in 9th grade, and I go to Broken Arrow Freshman Academy. A couple things that I am in Broken Arrow are show choir and color guard, and I'm in the club Tigers Challenge, SAD, and Peers Partners.
All right.
So you're in color guard as a freshman?
Yes.
You're a quite talented young lady.
Thank you.
Congratulations on that. And show choir, tell us about that. So,
Show choir, it's a great thing. It's something I love to sing and I love to dance, and it's just a mixture of it all, and it's just something for me to get out of my house and do something with a lot of other people in Broken Arrow. And I don't know, show choir is just like a little family that you can always go to and do what you love, pretty much.
I love it. That's what we mean by engagement. And last question. So tell us a little bit about using the Chromebooks at the Freshman Academy.
The Chromebooks. I think the Chromebook is a pretty great idea. The books, I don't know, I think they're a little too much, all the books, and the Chromebooks having everything right in front of you at all times is just a great way to get all my work done, and knowing when to turn things in, knowing how much time I have left when there's a time ticking. Oh, it's due at 11:59 tonight. I'm like, oh, great, okay, I know what I need to get done by then. And I have my Chromebook, and I can just take it everywhere with me and just
So
get
those
everything
subjects where you have OERs or online textbooks, that really helps having that Chromebook and having access at all times?
Yes,
See,
it
I
really
didn't plan
does.
this, but we're talking about OERs tonight. So that's wonderful. Okay, well, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here this evening.
Thank you for having
Karina,
me.
we'll come
Yes,
up here and
we're
get a
gonna
picture
take
up here.
Yep, that's right. Thank you for reminding me this time.
Next item will be the adoption of the agenda, but before we adopt the agenda, we'll need to pull items number 6 and items number 7 due to, I'm sorry, item 12, I apologize, number 6 and number 12.
Move the formal adoption of the agenda with the exception of item number 6 and 12.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson? Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Are we on voting buttons?
They're at the
top.
Oh, okay.
You're
There
different.
we go. Yep. All right. Next item, item number 7, Ms. Burns.
Mr. Allen?
Yes, ma'am.
Item number 5.
I apologize. Ms. Burns, go ahead and come on up. We'll get to you in just one second. Item number 5, a motion to approve the board minutes from the April 10th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Ms. Burns.
Our baseball team has been doing really well. I was just warming up in the bullpen, I believe. So. Dr. Dunlop, President Allen, and members of the Board of Education, tonight it is my great honor to present to you one of our students, Ms. Jada Holliday. We received word last week that Jada has been named as a U.S. Presidential Scholar. Established in 1964, the U.S. Presidential Scholars Program recognizes and honors some of our nation's most distinguished and talented graduating high school seniors. Only 161 students are chosen across the country each year for this honor. And this year, the state of Oklahoma has 3 presidential U.S. scholars, and Jada is one. This summer, Jada will travel to Washington, D.C., where she will be presented with the U.S. Presidential Scholars Medallion at a ceremony sponsored by the White House, in addition to getting to visit important sites and nationally prominent figures. Jada will have the opportunity to exchange ideas with other academically accomplished peers while forming memories and friendships that will last a lifetime. I am proud to present to you Broken Arrow High School's senior and U.S. Presidential Scholar recipient, Jada Holliday. Do you have a few words you'd like to say to the crowd, Jada?
Well, I'm up here, so I might as well. I was shocked when I found out that I had received this award, absolutely. I think I was more shocked when I was a semifinalist alongside a very great friend of mine, Jacob Taylor. And I remember us sitting down and we were having a conversation, and we were thinking, what if we both got elected? And we were like, oh, cool, we could take a picture with like all our favorite monuments. And we laughed. And then I said, but what if only one of us gets elected? And he said, then I will text you to send me the pictures you take with the other monuments. And it just reminded me of the community that I have at Broken Arrow and the opportunities that I've been open to, and the teachers that have given me the passion to take hold of these opportunities. And so the very first person that I told was Miss Donna Grottle, who's my AP environmental teacher, and she was overwhelmed. She started crying, and then I told her to stop because then I would start crying. It didn't work. And so I remember sitting down with her, and she told me how incredibly proud she was of me. And it just reminded me of the opportunities and the advisors and the mentors that I have right at the tips of my fingers every day. And I get to sit in a classroom, and they get to teach me things, and I get to learn from them. And so I'm very humbled by this award, and I would like to dedicate it to my teachers at Broken Arrow and to Broken Arrow Public Schools. They have immensely shaped me into the person that I am today, and I would not be standing up here receiving this award if it was not for them. So thank you.
Jada, can I say that not only is this well deserved, but I'm so thrilled that you'll be representing Broken Arrow. You know, obviously you're very accomplished. We can see that on paper. But hearing you speak just now, you're so poised that I know you're going to represent us in a wonderful way, and we're so happy for you. Congratulations.
May Mom get one as well?
You sure Mom doesn't want to be up here?
Wait, parents are coming.
Introduce the folks who are with you tonight. The other people that shaped her life.
Just a little bit.
That's outstanding. Okay, next item number 8, donations.
All right, I have 2 donations tonight. The first one is for a donation from PTA's Spring Creek's PTA. I believe Mrs. Malone and Mrs. McCartney are with us tonight. They're right there. They've worked tirelessly over the last couple of years to collect enough money, and Spring Creek has a very large track in the back of their playground, and they have earned enough money now, and we have some quotes where we will be able to pave that track on the Spring Creek playground. So I ask you tonight to accept that donation from the PTA.
Okay, discussion?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Miss Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Item number 9.
The next one is right across the street at Childers Middle School, and their PTA has worked hard to gather enough funds to take care of some play equipment outside of their cafeteria area. We're still working on some of the quotes, but they're in a rush to try to get something done this fiscal year, and so they'll either be building these concrete wedges similar to what we've done at Sequoia, or planter boxes similar to what we've done at Sequoia. They're working with a vendor that's actually going to donate some of the concrete, so we'll be working with them on some of those play items.
Discussion.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
A motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Miss Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes.
Thank you.
I want to thank the PTA for stepping up and filling the need financially. As you know, we're in pretty tough times right now, and every penny helps, and we appreciate all your hard work and dedication to our children. Thank you. Item 10, Mr. Officer.
Good evening, Dr. Dunlop, President Allen, members of the board. It's my privilege to bring to you this evening for employment consideration Dr. Kim Garrett as a grade level principal at our senior high school for this next school year. Dr. Garrett began her education career as a classroom teacher where she served more than 10 years, split between Oklahoma and Arkansas, transitioned to administration at Bentonville Public Schools in Northwest Arkansas, where she was an assistant principal and a principal, and then continued on to Springdale, Arkansas, where she was an assistant superintendent, and most recently and currently is serving as associate superintendent in Fayetteville. So she's had the opportunity to serve in the hot spots in Northwest Oklahoma. It is really, I think, a rare opportunity for us to get somebody with so much experience to come to our district, and also somebody with that we all feel like through the interview process is going to be really good for our kids. So we're excited to introduce Dr. Garrett, and I think we'll let you vote first, and then we'll let her introduce the folks that came with her, pending the vote, of course, because you don't want to introduce too soon. That could get embarrassing.
Slow down a little bit there, Mr.
Yeah,
Officer.
yes, sir.
Get us in trouble. We got cameras here. Any discussion?
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Okay, now we'll let. I did confirm earlier that there's a possibility that one of them might be a Hog fan.
Uh-oh.
So we have various counseling services available in the district. So we're going to work on that. But now I'll let Dr. Garrett introduce herself.
Is it okay if I just stand right here?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I confess I am a Hog fan. 14 years in Arkansas, that's the last place that we've been. But my husband is a diehard owner. So we feel like we are returning home. This is my husband, Rex Garrett. He's an electrical engineer. Just went to work for Audubon Engineering in Tulsa. And then our son, Adrian, is 7 years old. We have 2 older children, too. Adrian, went ahead and made the transition now. And so he has started school, just loving it at home.
Awesome.
He's very, very happy.
Welcome.
Ms. Garrett, welcome to Broken Arrow. But had we known the Hog fan / Sooner fan before the vote, I don't know how it would have went. But anyhow, welcome to Broken Arrow. Item number 11 be the consent agenda items. No, I'm sorry, comments from the public. It's been a long day. We don't have any, so we'll move on to item number 13, legislative updates. Ms. Tiger.
Good evening. Tonight's report is relatively short. I would say most of the attention, as everyone knows, at the Capitol is on the budget, as the next presentation we will focus on tonight, but there are a few things worth mentioning. I think number one, the most perplexing in the last month for education was the recent veto of the U.S. history EOI examination that had passed both the House and the Senate. That would have saved the state about $2.4 million. That was written by Senator J.J. Dossett. That was vetoed, so we will be implementing that test next year. Bills that are headed to the governor that we are watching are Senate Bill 514. They are creating a task force to examine school districts to see how they can become more efficient. And the word consolidate is not actually in the bill, but for all intents and purposes, people are watching this very closely as an examination of consolidation. House Bill 1760, we're very happy with, permanently puts in committees for reading sufficiency. House Bill 1623 really doesn't affect us, but it does prohibit corporal punishment for students with disabilities. And Senate Bill 244 will require an attendance policy for virtual schools, which we definitely agree with. Signed by the governor since our last board meeting is House Bill 2155, which requires the State Board of Education to adopt and work with local school boards to implement a new college and career planning tool known as the Individualized Career Academic Plan. I'm sure our instructional team will be bringing us a lot of information about that in months to come. That will go into effect November 1st. House Bill 1837 did remove the profit limit for lottery, so I know Mr. Allen may have some comments to make about this, but it is one source of revenue that people are talking about in hopes of generating funds for education or a possible stream for the proposed. Well, I'm going to leave that alone. On House Bill 1715, they did pass the Patriot Access to Students Act, and that was to encourage school boards to allow Patriot groups within the community to have more access to students and to encourage them to come into the school sites and to participate and recruit them into patriotic organizations.
Any questions?
No, but I definitely appreciate all the time that you put into preparing and presenting the report. It is very informational, and thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Ms. Tiger, one question, but you don't know of any revenue generating bills to your knowledge that,
I
or do you know of any that are being proposed or?
There were some being proposed for on our gas tax and different ones that have kind of stalled out at this time. Dr. Dunlop?
Sure. That currently it's still alive, but you know, they pulled it from vote last week. But it's that current legislation by Osborne out of Mustang, and it does implement a gas tax. I believe it's 6 cents, and a cigarette tax of $1.50. Somewhere around 200 million is what it would raise. They stalled voting on it because the early indications is that Democrats did not plan on voting in approval for that bill because there was no gross production tax added to it. Certainly, you know, we would support any kind of revenue regardless of how it comes, but currently that bill has just kind of been paused, and we're anxiously waiting to see what happens.
No.
Because I believe currently our state, we are the lowest fuel tax in the entire country.
Correct.
Do we know where, if that 6 cent increase was passed, where it would place us nationally or even just regionally?
I don't think there's a formal, on the gas tax or on the
Yes.
gross production?
Just the gas tax, the fuel tax.
I'm not sure on that. The main focus that is right now is on gross production. And if you see on the maps that are going around that our state average is 2%, some being at 1%, they're calling for a 7%, which would still put us at the lower bracket, but I'm unsure on gas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, item 14, will be budget update.
Good evening, President Allen, members of the board. This presentation this evening is for informal purposes only, as a final budget for our district will not yet be recommended. And the reason being, Broken Arrow, along with every other district in Oklahoma, is waiting for our state legislature to approve the 2017-18 budget. At this time, we feel it would be irresponsible and unfair to our teachers, our students, and our community to verbalize potential cuts when we don't know the exact fiscal impact that our state's revenue failure will have on our district. That being said, Broken Arrow Public Schools, along with most of the districts in the state, we are preparing scenarios in anticipation of 3%, 5%, and 10% cuts. Our priority remains the same: to keep these cuts as far away from the classroom as possible. For some departments, that might mean capitalizing on the opportunity to reorganize through attrition or by reducing operating budgets. District leadership continues to work together to find ways to continue providing an exemplary educational experience to our students and our families. Our budget was impacted by the state revenue shortfalls in January, February, March, and April, and we are preparing for state revenue shortfalls again this month and in June. To date, Broken Arrow Public Schools has received nearly $3 million less than what we were promised by the state last summer. In order to absorb that impact, we have cut $3.87 million already, and unfortunately, we are put in the precarious position of finding additional ways to cut even more dollars next year. The money that remains to be cut will depend on the state legislature's approved allocation to common education for 2017-18, as well as the priorities of our local school board. At this, I'd like to turn this over to Natalie Eniff, our Chief Financial Officer, to discuss these funding scenarios and possible cuts.
Thank you, Dr. Dunlop. Unfortunately, as Ms. Tiger alluded to earlier, there are not a lot of new updates as far as where we are with the budget, but would like to bring the board up to speed with what we do know and kind of our process as a district leadership team for what we're planning going into school year 17-18. In sum total, common education is at about an $86.6 million loss through fiscal year 16-17. You can see the various months we've been cut due to the revenue shortfall, the cash shortfalls through the State Department of Education. So $86.6 million to date. Superintendent Hoffmeister has said that by the end of June, she expects that number to be at about $100 million. You can see we've talked about this before, the history of the average peer pupil funding amount has continued to decrease throughout the years. To date, we are at 3,008.60 per weighted ADM. This number, there's a couple of things I think we should point out with this number. Not only has it obviously decreased, but the percentage that the state continues to kick into this figure has gone down through the years. So all that to say, it's put more burden on our local taxpayers to continue with our current funding formula. If we were funded at the level we were funded in 2009, that's a difference of $7.7 million to Broken Arrow. So where we are to date, we lost $1.2 million through the revenue shortfall. They redid the state funding formula, adjusted the factors. We lost $1.2 million through that. Subsequently, in March and April, the State Department, quite frankly, didn't have enough cash in their bank account to distribute to the school districts for what the promised apportionment would be. So lost $450,000 northwards of that each one of those months. So to date, we're at $2.1 million. We are set to receive our May allocation this week, so I will be monitoring that very closely to see what that comes in. Right now, we just have projections for the last 2 months of the year, but if they hold to the pattern for the first quarter of this year, we're looking at about $3 million in total for school year 16-17. Impact to the fund balance, we're looking at about a $3 million hit, hovering right around $10 million from the $13 million from what was started at the beginning of this year. We decided as a district and as a leadership team when these cuts started hitting us rather unexpectedly because we were promised a very different budget when this started out, to not make any reactionary decisions, to try and weather the cuts through our fund balance and make the appropriate steps in 17-18 once we knew all the pertinent information. Just a reminder for what everything that was cut last year, about $3.6 million total. What we're looking at cutting this year, coincidentally, the cuts from last year and this year add up to about that $7.7 million I alluded to earlier from what we would be funded at the highest if you go back to 2009. So $7.7 million cut between the last couple years. These are the different scenarios that we're currently looking at, the 10, 5, and 3%. Right now, we are really hoping, planning on the 5% cut of $3.3 million. If you look at how the budget, the expenditure budget in the general fund is broken out, obviously the largest portion of that is direct classroom instruction, 63% of our budget. But there are so many other areas represented that are vital to making our school district function. While direct classroom instruction is very important, you look at student support services, where our nurses, our counselors, student transportation, operations and maintenance, our custodial and maintenance staff. All of these other areas are key in making the school district run efficiently, providing exemplary customer service to our staff and our students. And so all of those areas, unfortunately, are looked at being cut because of our current budget crisis. Thought this would be good for the board and for our public to know. A lot of attention on what it costs to provide student transportation. Let's talk about the total payroll to the budget first. $86 million is what we spend in salaries and benefits. 81% of our general fund budget, so that means that for a district of our size, 19,000 kiddos, over 2,000 employees, we're running on a budget of 19%. In my opinion, that's very lean for, like I mentioned earlier, all of the services and support that we are providing out to our children and our staff. Common misconceptions. School districts are sitting on a giant fund balance. This fund balance is essential to our cash flow as a district for what we need to start the school year. A lot of our allocations do not start coming in until mid-year. Our big allocation, which is our ad valorem, we don't receive until January. So these big fund balances or savings accounts we're criticized for having is essential for turning on the lights, opening the doors when kids and teachers start coming back to us in August. Just like the state has a cash flow problem, so do we. We're running and operating as a business, and so we have to monitor our investments and our cash accordingly. Another common misconception that we're using our general fund dollars to build buildings, facilities, stadiums, and that is simply not true. We're very lucky here in Broken Arrow that we have a very supportive community who have passed two very historic bond issues for us in 2009 and 2015. Without the support of those community members and patrons, we would not have the facilities that we have. We would still be in portables, and the quality of education that we would be able to offer our students would suffer immensely. Transportation for the district. We receive just over $500,000 from the State Department for our average daily haul for transportation. We spend about $6 million in the general fund to pay for salaries, benefits, gas, diesel, all the parts and supplies needed to maintain our buses. $6 million, and we receive just a little over $500,000 in funding. In addition to that, we have great support from our bond issues that have been dedicated to transportation. You can see in 2009, $10 million was passed, and in 2015, another $9 million was passed. So it is quite an operation, quite the capital investment to be able to provide student transportation for a district of our size. So in closing, bottom line, we feel as though our legislators must take an affirmative stand to figure out new ways to generate revenue for us. The problem has been using one-time money in the rainy day fund for reoccurring expenses, and that is what has helped us get to this $878 million shortfall, because that one-time money unfortunately is now gone, and they have a very big task at hand to figure out what to do with in the next 10 or 11 days. I would answer any questions that you might have.
Ms. Heenan, I do have a question. The revenue failures began 3 years ago, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so the legislature from that point in time has had challenges in addressing new sources of revenue. And I do appreciate all of the processes and conversations, Dr. Dunlop, that the district is engaging in to determine where best to make these very difficult decisions. And I know there are a number of individuals at the state level, certainly various leaders throughout this region who are working with our legislature to try to get them to move in the direction of creating new sources of revenue. And as a board member, certainly I, along with many others, will continue to do that as well. But I do know it's very challenging for all of our employees and certainly for our community as a whole. And I just again want to say to each of you as we move through this, the most important thing is that we do listen and that we do take the input very seriously, and we make decisions. They may not be the decisions that are the highest priority for everyone, but I do appreciate that we are moving through that process. And at some point, I'm just believing that this budget shortfall, as we move forward, looking at either a 10, a 5, or a 3, that we create enough sources of revenue that we're not in that position. But I don't know, our hope is that we don't cut it more than 3% right now, correct?
That's correct. As an accountant by trade, this has been very difficult to deal in conjecture and hypothesis. I would love to be able to stand up here and tell you that this is where we're going to be going into 17-18. But unfortunately, what this year has shown us is that, even going into 17-18, when they do finally release the numbers, we have reason to doubt that those numbers will hold true, especially around the midterm adjustment time. And that's when the bottom started dropping out from under us. And so I think the proactive thing to do is to plan accordingly, and if it comes out better than expected, we can cautiously start looking at our options of what we may have in terms of some of the reductions that we made. But the confidence level right now, I think, among districts across the state are low because of what's happened to us this year.
Ms. Enoff, I have a question. You talked about the cuts to us in the public ed. Do you know what any cuts that were made to charter or virtual schools within Oklahoma with the budget situation?
Well, they're on the state funding formula, the same as we are. However, they don't have the same, quite frankly, the same
Cost.
overhead costs that traditional school districts have. I think that is one of the problems overall with our funding formula, is
Right.
that we have simply outgrown it because of the new ways that we are delivering education to our kids. And I would hope that the legislators would want to take a look at that and examine a fair and equitable way to make sure students of all kinds, no matter how they're receiving their education, are funded appropriately.
Ms. Dunlop, what does this do? I mean, I know we're not trying to impact, or we don't want the impact to be held in the classroom, which I'm assuming that would be offerings, programs, and things like that. But what does that do from a class size standpoint for us? Will we see larger class sizes as a result, potentially? What does that do for us?
The answer is yes to both of those. So first of all, does it impact programming? It does. There's no way you can prevent it from impacting programming. And those are the tough decisions that we have to make as a district and as a leadership team. It's no different than if you're a parent and you're having several rough months and you don't know how you're going to pay the bills. You have to decide. Are you going to be able to buy groceries, or are you going to be able to pay for the electric bill? So those are tough decisions we're making. And obviously, we try to go after programming that impacts the least amount of students first and protect the classroom at the as a biggest priority. Will our class sizes go up? Possibly. They've already gone up. One of the things I was thinking about as I was sitting here is, while we've had budget revenue failures the last 3 years, we've had reductions in revenue since 2009.
Yeah.
So that means if you know of a 7th grade student walking around today, that child has never known a year that they have not had a reduction in education funding. So what message does that send to that child? They only get one chance at kindergarten, at 1st grade, at 2nd grade. Well, they've known this for 7 years, actually 8 years. And that's not acceptable. That's not how we do things in Oklahoma. So something's got to change.
Ms. Enoff, how do we respond? Say, we don't get we're down $3 million again next year. At what point do we get at a critical situation here to where, you can't offer services or the quality of education that we're doing here in Broken Arrow? Because we're at 10% now. I think we have a board policy is that 5% is our minimum that we can have. I mean, we could be there very quickly and exhaust those funds. So what do we do?
I mean, for a district of our size, the level of our monthly payroll, the level that we're paying vendors, you can eat through that fund balance pretty fast. You know, I think if it gets into the double digits of cut percentage, unfortunately, there probably isn't any other answer but looking at teachers and looking at the classroom. The leadership team the past month has gone through a painstaking process of looking at all areas where we can cut, reduce, become more efficient, however you want to term it. And it has been a process, and every week we have gone through, vetted, discussed, and tried to figure out the best way to utilize our taxpayer dollars, our general fund dollars, to where Broken Arrow kids, teachers, and staff will be impacted the least. So it's been a process. We've shared that process with all district administration last week, so they can start being liaisons and ambassadors for us to our parents. But it has been going through it last year and then kind of having round 2 of it this year. It has been an arduous process, but the great thing about Broken Arrow is we have fantastic leaders and fantastic staff that have collaborated in this, and it has not these decisions have not been made in a silo.
Ms. Enoff, question I have is, I know one may get excited about the profit limit being removed on the lottery aspect, but isn't there a bit of, I mean, how that lottery money is looked at? I mean, it's kind of a bait and switch kind of a gig with that when it's not necessarily we get all this extra money coming into the school district. Can you talk to that a little bit?
We are hoping that this is not a repeat of when the lottery was passed.
Right.
I'm not sure how many years ago, but we're hoping to see real revenue and real dollars come from that.
Good.
That is not run through the formula where it's taken as a chargeable from us. The gross production tax, there's a lot of talk about that, and I agree that that is something that needs to be looked at and examined, definitely, because that is a major industry for our state. But again, that is a chargeable for us as a district, so it is new revenue one time and then taken from us through the formula in subsequent years. And again, I think that kind of goes back to one of the overarching problems with our formula, needing it to be revamped and looked at in a fair and equitable way for all districts across the state.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of people don't realize that even if we raise money locally, it can't help a district, because then it's taken away in what's called a chargeable. So that is taken from our funding formula. So for every bit that we raise locally, that's reduced out of our state aid. It doesn't help us. And so again, until we change the way our schools are funded and change the way that's calculated, that won't help us. Fortunately, I did read through that lottery bill, I mean even the fine print, because I thought the same thing. Well, they're just going to do the same thing. They're going to say they're going to dump all this money in through our lottery, and then they'll take money off the bottom and we'll end up in the same spot. Fortunately, they did write into that bill language that they cannot supplant that money, that it must supplement. So that is good news. But again, we are dying on the operating table right now, so we have to have immediate streams of revenue, or else it will be significant. And looking at that difference between a 5% and 10% budget cut, there's no comparison. At that point, it will, and I repeat, it will impact our classroom teachers. There's no way we can do it any other way. So we think it's impacting our students now. If we have 10% cut, every single child in our district, every single child in our state will be impacted.
I think more than anything, my hopes is that when the budget is finally presented, it's a realistic budget for what they're actually expecting to collect in sales tax, income tax, all of the other revenue streams, because quite frankly, some of their estimates were a little high and off the mark going into 16-17. So if we can get a realistic picture and plan accordingly, That's all we're asking for.
How many current opening teaching positions do we have in the district? Do we know?
I would say 20-ish. Generally, every summer, we hire 80 to 100
That's certified teaching positions?
turnover certified every year.
So 3% reduction, what does that 2.3 million would look like, and how many teachers would that be if it was in a teacher area?
Really?
Mhm. Quite a bit.
Off the top of my head.
100? Mr. Stecker?
100 times 30,000.
Okay. So we have current teaching positions that aren't filled, that we aren't able to fill because we don't have enough.
Well,
maybe-
we just already have resignations for next year.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
I just wonder how many we had open this year. Were not filled during the school year.
We're generally able to find teachers. I mean, we have high needs areas that are hard to find, special education, ELL, things of that nature that we struggle to find teachers with, but for the most part, we're able to find.
It's just concerning because I know that I believe our count at the high school is 34-1 in our classroom counts, and you keep cutting teachers. What's the I mean, if you have to cut teachers or your class size increases, how do you even provide a meaningful quality education? Getting 35 of whatever in one facility and try to educate them with a good quality education. I mean, that just seems very difficult. We have great teachers. For them, we have a presidential scholar to have that. I mean, to be able to do the things they do with the limited resources that we've had financially.
Not
And
at 3%, we would have classrooms of 45.
it's just disheartening.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, Natalie. Okay, next item will be the approval of the consent agenda.
Move the consent agenda items 15 through 69.
Second?
We have an emotion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, item number 70. Dr. Dunlop. Okay.
I'm getting caught up here. Okay, the item before you is the discussion motion to vote on the reappointment of Scott Wise to the EDC board. What this is every year they reappoint members to the EDC board, and this is the Economic Development Corporation. It is managed through our city, our chamber, and of course the school district also votes for the approval of these members. So this item asks that you consider the approval of Mr. Wise Scott Wise to the EDC board.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Item 71.
Okay, 71 is a similar item, only it is to reappoint Mr. Rob Whitlock to the EDC board for a new 3-year term.
Discussion?
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Item 72.
Okay, President Allen and members of the board, this item is a resolution that is actually being brought to you, or you're bringing this forward as a commentary of what is going on with the budget in the state of Oklahoma. We've had a lot of conversations. We just talked about a bill that had been brought forward by Representative Osborne out of Mustang to raise the cigarette tax and gas tax, and the complaint that this did not include the gross production tax. So to give a little information behind that, we don't hear a whole lot of information around this, but in fact, Oklahoma is sitting at 2%. We tax 2% on any oil and gas production. This is significantly lower than other states. To give an example, if we were to raise the gross production by 5%, that would improve. There's a lot of different estimates, but a lot of professionals out there say that this would increase revenue by about $150 million a year. It's been proposed by many people that we increase it to 7%, which would be an increase of around $200 million a year. This last Sunday, there was an opinion letter in the Tulsa World written by Bob Jackman, who is a petroleum geologist. I would think he'd be considered a professional. And in that he states, it is a well-known industry fact that oil and gas companies drill where geoscientists, seismologists, and geologists locate new productive areas, not where production taxes are lowest. He punctuates this by pointing out that Oklahoma has 0 drilling rigs in formerly big oil producing counties. We have a total of 124 drilling rigs in Oklahoma. Texas has 426 at a 6% tax. The former tax in Oklahoma was 7%, and drilling did not stop. So with that, I thank the Board of Education for the bravery in standing up and making this statement today and the resolution around our gross production tax.
Thank you, Dr. Dunlap. I'll read the resolution to the board and the public, and we can discuss and vote as a board. Broken Arrow Public Schools resolution, whereas Oklahoma has led the nation in cuts to per pupil state aid expenditures since 2008, and whereas Oklahoma teacher salaries rank in the bottom 3 lowest teacher salaries in the nation, and whereas the state of Oklahoma has experienced repeated revenue failures during the last 2 years, and whereas the current 2016-17 school year education appropriations provided by the Oklahoma state legislators are $86.6 million less than what was promised in the common education budget due to revenue failures, and whereas mid-year reductions and shortfalls resulted in an additional $2.1 million less in education funding for the 2016-17 school year, and whereas further funding reductions are anticipated before the end of the year, and whereas sustainable and appropriate funding from the state of Oklahoma is crucial to Broken Arrow Public Schools Board of Education's mission to ignite the joy of learning and to prepare every student for the great success in college, career, and life. And whereas over $1 billion in unnecessary tax breaks to oil and gas companies in the last 3 years has alone been a contributing factor to the decreased education budget and reoccurring revenue failures. And whereas eliminating these tax breaks and returning the gross production tax to historic levels of 7% would yield an approximate $500 million in 2008. And whereas a 7% rate would ensure all oil and gas companies are taxed at the same rate and will not decrease oil and gas drilling in Oklahoma, because the rate will still be equal or less than all other states in the nation where oil and gas drilling occurs. And whereas immediately returning the gross production tax rate to 7% is the most direct route to avoid both the impending cuts and to putting the state budget on a sustainable path forward. Now, therefore, being it resolved that we, the members of the Broken Arrow Public Schools Board of Education, joining with voices from all sectors and throughout the state, hereby do call members of the legislature and of the state of Oklahoma to immediately pass legislation to return the gross production tax to historic rates of 7% to be effective for all wells on July 1, 2017, and thereby put on us the path for an adequate funded public education system with the resources to pay our teachers an honorable wage and support the most important of our work as a state, preparing every student for the greatest success in college, careers, and life.
Dr. Dunlap, I do have one question. If approved this evening, how would we inform our legislators of this action?
We would do that through our communications department, through Amanda Summers. Of course, we would push this information out to local media and inform our legislature in that way. We do, of course, have personal relationships with our local legislature members, and I'll be happy to inform them personally.
Any other discussion?
I just, some of the studies that, when looking at this, I know it's been a topic of discussion. It was fascinating to me to see the variances of vertical drilling taxation versus horizontal drilling taxation. And it seems that our oil and gas industry has figured this out pretty well by doing the horizontal gas drilling, which is what typically occurs here lately. I know you said it was 2%. Some of the things I saw was 1% taxation. And it's appalling to me that you have an industry that makes and contributes greatly to a lot of families and things like that, but yet they are not upholding their end of the bargain when it comes to really helping our state fund an education and many other things. And so I think it is very relevant to at least move this back up to historic levels and especially eliminate some of these exemptions that are bringing down. Hopefully it clarifies up some of these, eliminates some exemptions as well as clarifies some language so that we don't have these loopholes that they can do horizontal drilling under a 1% taxation versus vertical drilling of a 7% taxation. So I'm a strong advocate for this type of a proposal.
I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Ms. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Thank you. Next item under operations will be item number 73. Mr. Tolomeo.
Good evening, President Allen, Dr. Dunlop, and members of the board. I'm going to show you a quick video of Timber Ridge Elementary School. We did another drone fly through, and this is kind of really starting to take shape quite nicely. You have the front entry and media center there. This is coming into the building from the parking lot into that secured vestibule front entry sort of that we've had in all the other elementary schools we've done. We are finished with the brickwork. All of that yellow banding that you see, the yellow stuff, is actually waterproofing, and that's where the metal panels will be installed. The metal panels are on site, so we're just kind of finishing up some stuff before they start going up. Our building is completely dried in, so inside we're moving and the weather's not affecting us at all. This is going into the front entry. We've done sort of a tree theme through this with the petals and the wayfinding and all that. This is the media center. That's the yellow walls, that feature wall with those nooks, those reading nooks. And then around that glass, that curved glass, we actually have done a built-in bench to that kids can come and sit on and read. This is one of the pod areas. It's the green pod because it's painted green. And it'll have some green carpet. This is an entry element. It's just kind of an abstract tree, and we've done a curved bench around the tree, help promote use of the lobby a little bit. And this is an intersection of 3 pods. At this school, we've done 6 pods for the 6th grades with some flexibility in the center to where, if you have one grade level that needs 6 classrooms, we have a couple of classes that can be converted into the different pods depending on their enrollment. I know this is kind of a boring picture, but we're actually really happy with it. The engineer and architect has actually said this is the best and cleanest installation of roof that they've ever seen. So that's really cool. That's that's the restroom right there. This is the hand wash station going into the cafeteria. We have a lot of stuff going on right now, so it's pretty interesting to go out there. Every time you go out there, something else has changed. We've done LED lights in the hallways to help with some energy consumption costs. We've done a lot of stuff like that to help fight costs. This elementary school will have 2 separate playgrounds, one for the younger grades, one for the older grades. It kind of laid out that way with the 6 pods kind of flanking both sides. And then that dark colored brick right there, that's the gymnasium. It also doubles as a safe room, which means basically it's a gymnasium unless there's a tornado, then it'll be a safe room. We've carried that, you can see the wall tile has the colors of the pods as well. We've carried that theme all the way through the building. If you need to go to the blue pod, you follow the blue petals in the ceiling, you follow the blue tile on the wall. Kind of all carries through. This is one of the group restrooms in the green pod. That's actually the older grade level playground that you saw kind of at the bottom of the screen. That's the bus loop. And we have Cat 6 cable going in for technology. So we're moving along really, really nicely at this school. We have the floor prep being done right here. There's the ceramic tile for the walls. This is the kitchen. It models after the other 3 schools we've done, very, very similar. We've increased stacking space. So like if you go out to Timber or out to Creekwood during pickup, we've increased that stacking space by 2 folds just by configuring the drives a little bit differently. This is the gymnasium safe room area. You can see the stage. This is the magenta pod.
Is it otherwise known as purple?
No, pink.
Oh, okay.
Pink. I was told when I said pink, I was told that was wrong.
Oh, okay.
I did get an orange pod.
There you go.
So that's always good, right?
Good man, Bob.
You can see that stacking space that I was talking about here in this shot, how it kind of goes all the way around. And then I will start my presentation. Just kind of wanted to start with that first. We have quite a few projects under construction. All of these projects are the phase 1 bond issue, phase 1 of the 2015 bond issue. We've completely contracted all of those projects out. Timber Ridge, we've kind of already touched on this one. This is kind of that aerial that you saw earlier, the media center to the right, and then walking into the main entry. And then that feature wall inside the media center is right there with the reading nooks. And then the hallways and the restrooms. The high school is progressing pretty nicely. It was 11 classrooms. We fixed a whole lot of ADA issues going into the field house, whether that's restroom ADA, access ADA, and then we've also done an entry element walking into the field house. You can kind of see that in this picture right here. We did, last board meeting, we contracted for the south parking lot improvements. That is completely redoing that south parking lot. We're aligning drives, we're adding drainage. It'll help the life of the parking lot, and it will definitely fix the potholes, which have become quite a nuisance. Sequoia Middle School, the green and blue areas are areas we've done. The red area is an area we're under construction now, and then everything else will be touched this summer that wasn't touched in the 2009 bond issue. This is the gym entry that we've recently redone. We've added new windows. We had some leaky windows that weren't the greatest. And then this is the old cafeteria, which will become the media center. We've again cut in some windows there and increased the daylight into that space. The Freshman Academy was approved a couple months ago, and we started working out there last week. We have already hit our first utility this morning, but that's kind of a different story. And the Kirkland Activity Complex, we started that one last week as well. We've started moving dirt. It's 2 turf fields and renovations to the auditorium. We've done some fire access lanes there on the west side, and we've started moving dirt around. And then the last project of the 2009 bond issue is the Performing Arts Center. It's an addition out on the west side, which is kind of going to be really, really flexible for all of our different uses of this space, whether it's for meetings or practice rooms or dressing rooms. It'll be able to fit the needs we have of this building. It also includes a relocation of the box office to increase the circulation of flow of that space. And then another project that's not really a construction bond project, but with our bond funds for transportation, we're adding some fuel tanks out there. Our fuel tanks are at their life. We need to replace them before we get hit with a fine or anything if they leak. And then we're increasing their size, which will help us better able to schedule when we receive fuel, and we can dictate what those prices are a little bit better, that rather than, oh, we need it now. So that project is also another bond project. And then there's my little caricature.
Mr. Ptolomeo, I do have a question, a couple of them. I wanted to know, we had quite a bit of rain. Did that pose any problems with, you said we had already hardened in at the new elementary school, but any other projects, did that pose any problems?
It's slowing us down a little bit at the high school because we're still exposed out there. We can still do framing, like interior metal studs with that building, so we've just kind of moved that timeline of when we install different things around. But we're still set to occupy that building November 1st.
Okay, and then the other question I had, which I know you're already addressing, but I just want to confirm it. Around the high school, around that facility, the lighting was it was less than. So I'm sure on this new remodel, the lighting has been, really, in other words, we're adjusting some of that and making sure that we've got plenty of light there.
We have currently, and last summer we did a addition of a parking lot to the west of the auxiliary gym. One of our light poles actually fell, and we replaced all 4 of those lights in the south parking lot with brand new 4 headlight fixtures. We're going to reuse those in the reconfiguration of the parking lot, but we're adding an additional 4 lights back there as well. So that has been a very big problem, and we are increasing the lights out there.
Yeah, and I appreciate it very much. I know for safety, it's a big deal, so I just wanted to confirm that.
And then we're also adding some pedestrian lights out there too to help, like when people actually walk in, they'll be able to see a little bit better as well.
Any other questions, discussion? Next
Thank you.
item, 74, Mr. Tornado.
This is the teacher furniture for the high school classroom edition.
Discussion.
Move approval.
Second?
Got a motion and a second, please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item 75.
75 is the student furniture for the high school edition.
Mr.
Mr. Tolman, this is for all the those classrooms that were.
Those 11 classrooms, yes, sir.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
And Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, item 76.
We had our low contractor out at the Freshman Academy for our drapes has pulled their bid. It was under $50,000, so we didn't have a bid bond. So this is approval to go to the second lowest bidder.
Okay. Discussion.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, item 77.
Item 77 is the same, similar situation. It's the AV package. That low contractor has again pulled their bid, and we're asking to go to the second lowest bidder.
Say that again, Mr. Ptolomeo.
The low subcontractor for the AV portion of the Freshman Academy has pulled their bid. This is to go to the next lowest bidder, and again, their bid was under $50,000. So,
Okay. Move approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, item 78.
78 is purchase of teacher furniture for growth.
Mr. Ptolomeo, I do have a question. This is consistent with what we're purchasing still,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
No. Make a motion to approve?
Second.
A motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, item 79.
79 is the student furniture for growth.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, item number 80.
80, we had to rebid a couple of items at Kirkland Activity Complex, and this is the accepting of those bid items, and they were within the allowance.
Mr. Ptolomeo, could you tell me why we need to rebid those?
We didn't receive any bids.
Okay, well, that's a good
The
reason.
first round.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any more discussion?
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, item 81.
Item 81, we had a discrepancy in our bid tab. It reflected that Texaco was low bidder. DCI was another contractor. They were actually low bidder. They were on the bid tabs. Our numbers just didn't carry over correctly.
Just placed in the wrong
It was placed in the
spot?
wrong cell, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, but Mr. Ptolomeo. Item 82, Mr. Moore.
Good evening. I would like to ask your approval of a bid submitted by Airco Incorporated to provide 9 HVAC replacement units for Arrowhead Elementary in the amount of $49,625. These bids were done in accordance with the competitive bid law.
Can you tell me, it says bond funds, so I'm expecting that it's the current bond.
Yes, maintenance bond
Okay.
funds.
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Item 83, Mr. Moore.
Is to asking your approval of a bid submitted by Matthews Ford to provide an F-Series standard duty box truck for general services to be used by the warehouse in the amount of $47,100. I do need to note that we did not accept the lowest bidder from Chris Nichols Dodge due to the transportation's familiarity with Fords. They preferred us to pick a Ford, which was less than $1,000 difference.
But we're in compliance with that stated
Yes.
reason?
Yes.
Okay,
The Ford was our listed
okay.
on the bids.
Move approval?
Second?
A motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Miss Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Item 84, Mr. Moore.
Seeking your approval of the bid submitted by Bob Hurley Ford to provide 2 Ford F-250 four-wheel drive regular cab trucks and 1 F-550 extra-large four-wheel drive truck for our maintenance department. The 2 F-250s were actually cheaper than buying F-150s. That was kind of a surprise to us, so we went with the larger truck. And the F-550 will help us. Right now we have 1 dump truck, and this will allow us to have a medium-duty truck that can help fill in for that one and help us with snow plowing. It'll have a dump bed for mulch and things like that.
Discussion.
Make a motion to approve?
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Miss Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Moore.
you.
Next item, 85, Ms. Bergwald.
Hello, I have 3 items tonight where we would like to name some facilities. Our board policy asks us to form a committee when we're naming a school building, but it allows us to bring forward out of the superintendent's office anytime we're naming anything to do with athletics or function, and all 3 of these fall under that category. The first one I have for you tonight is our old North Intermediate High School campus. Renaming that to Kirkland Activities Complex, that is plural. Instead of activity. So Kirkland Activities Complex, that is where the soccer fields will be located, the gymnasium will be opened back up, the auditorium opened back up, and probably eventually the natatorium as well.
I do think this is a very good move. I do think it respects the history of that location and the high school, and I think the community will be very pleased about it. I move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Miss Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Next item, 86, Ms. Bergwald.
Our next one is the indoor complex and the athletics offices, the building there south of Memorial Stadium. We've been calling it the multipurpose facility, and it doesn't really encompass all that goes on there. The Pride uses that in various groups, and so after much discussion, we would like to call that the Varsity Training Center, similar to what OSU is doing on their campus with their indoor facility.
Well, if OSU's doing it, we got to do it. My God. Any discussion?
No. Make a motion to approve?
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Miss Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes.
And our last one, but not least one, is renaming the Haskell campus.
We didn't get voting buttons then. I don't know.
Real quick.
It's
There we go.
There we go.
thinking.
Yeah, next item, 87, Ms. Bergwald.
The next one is renaming our Haskell campus. As you know, it was an elementary school, and then it went to Haskell Middle School, and now it's where our alternative academy is, but we're looking at other academic options there, including Margaret Hudson, our virtual school, those kinds of items, or those kind of programs, and so we would like to rename that campus our Options Academy.
Discussion.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Miss Kelly,
Yes.
and Mr. Allen.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Bergwald.
Thank you.
Next item, 88, Mr. Officer.
Good evening again. Drug Ms. Peterson up here because this involves all of the instructional specialists. So we wanted to, Ms. Peterson and myself and Dr. Coates and Ms. Dias wanted to give the instructional specialists an opportunity to update you where we are with our open educational resources, and also take a chance to just acknowledge all of their work And I think you'll be a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of hours spent by them in their leadership, as well as teachers around the district over the last several years through this process. So we wanted to, they're all here, and I'm honestly not sure about what we decided about a presentation. Looks like Ms. Morales drew the short straw, but we do want to introduce them all. So Ms. Johnson is our technology instructional specialist. Oh, sorry. Ms. Weingartner is our math instructional specialist. Ms. Bruner is one of our elementary instructional specialists. And Ms. Margie Moore is currently one of our elementary instructional specialists, and unfortunately we're allowing her to retire. It's not a great move on our part, but Ms. Goodenough is history, and then Ms. Holt is our English instructional specialist.
I have to commend them all, but I have to really with Amy and Margie. This is so different for elementary. There are really no elementary OERs out there, and so they paved a way. And to tell you that they were jumping up and down doing cartwheels when I first said, "Hey, guess what we're going to do?" I would be lying. And it was very nerve-wracking, but it is amazing to see what they have put together. And so I just wanted to take the opportunity to tell them thank you for taking a risk, because it was a risk, knowing that the teachers, it's not like anything that they worked with before. So I want to thank you all.
Good evening. So I'll go ahead and fill you in on the Open Educational Resources, OER, that I'll reference them from now on here. This first slide shows you where we are to date. It's amazing to think that we started out with a pilot of 3 open textbooks for middle school science, and we now have them for we have about 41 courses. That includes K through 5, math and ELA, and then all the 4 content areas at the secondary level as well. I also would like to commend the ELA, because the elementary crew have really done a lot of interdisciplinary open educational resources to pull in the other subjects that are sometimes considered de-emphasized. They're working to make sure all content areas are represented in an interdisciplinary manner, which is best instructional practices. We have spent 247 days curating open resources, and I can tell you that that's actually phenomenal for the quality that they're putting out, for the amount of time. It is a time crunch all the time, and they want to always give the best, have the best foot forward for the resources. So 247 days is actually not that long when you think about the products that they've been providing to students. And then we have over 200 teachers, and I want to just highlight that the whole curation and development of that in itself is professional development. It's just one of the many beneficial byproducts that have come along with open educational resources, because the teachers have to collaborate, discuss, and consider what is representing the student performance expectation and what is going to be best for our students. They have to think about that all the time while they're developing them. So we love that. Next slide. This is actually, the number needs to be bigger. One key word in open educational resources is the O. It needs to be open. And there's 23 districts that are represented here for our state that are using them or collaborated with us in some way. I was talking with Beth earlier today, and we think that number is actually 27. I spoke with some folks in Nowata who wanted access to our texts also because of all the budget shortfalls, so it's nice to know. But they also would like to be part of the development of a chemistry OER next year, where our teachers will be developing labs. And here's the great thing about the fact that we're sharing this with everybody is it's also brings into it the peer review process and the vetting process. And what's interesting is many districts within our state are actually taking the cover or whatever and just, okay, well, this is going to be ours too. It looks good, but we'll just say that it's ours. So that's, I think, wonderful. And on top of it, we're actually even expanding out of state. Susie Holt went to an Open Educational Resource Conference in Texas, and I know she shared some of the resources there. I know I personally had some teachers attend a conference in California, and they were interested in it. Howard Hughes Medical Institute, which is based in Maryland, they're interested in our open educational resources and would like to be a part of it. So Broken Arrow is definitely not just leading the way in the state, but we're being talked about in other parts of the country as well. So that's also a really great thing. And then another beneficial byproduct is the money savings that are coming about as a result. This year, for this year alone, we calculated that it was approximately, and by we I mean Beth, 1.3 million in savings for this year. So we know that over the course of, since we're in ending our third year of development, that it's even greater than that. And it's not about cutting the money. That wasn't. We wanted to make sure we were able to provide what's best for our students. But it's been a nice byproduct of the whole OER adoption process.
Ms. Morales, can you tell me a little bit about, okay, so we started out using these. It was kind of a little bit of brainchild between Lady at the State Department and you and Mr. Officer.
Yes, ma'am.
Which was really scary at the time, but
it
so
was
proud of you all.
But fun.
But tell me a little bit about how OERs and the use of those, especially that first year, did you see any change in students' learning in those science areas?
That's a really good question. But yeah, because it is so new, research is actually very limited. And I happened to be pursuing my master's at the time, so I decided to have my thesis be studying the student and teacher perceptions of OER use. Their debut, they were a huge hit. The students loved them, and it was overwhelmingly positive. I would say that at this time, it's too early to call anything, but there are no negative consequences that we've seen. It's either benign, just viewed as this is just another resource. We're online all the time and we do this all the time. To some students saying, actually now I find this interesting, or now I can read the text. And when you think about the fact that all our texts are supported by our district app, Google Read and Write, we're able to have text highlighted and read to students, and they can choose the gender, the speed, the reading speed, and they can highlight any words and even build an inventory of words that they want to learn more about. So the possibilities are endless. I mean, we've developed new courses. Heather Goodenough, because of social studies, I mean, she's been able to create courses that they don't have textbooks for. It's breaking the walls of saying, just because there's not a textbook doesn't mean that we can't learn about these things. So we have military history, we have African American studies, and what's the third one I'm forgetting, Heather? History of war and current events. So, and those are things that our students need to be learning. So I think it is empowering teachers to take charge of the curriculum, and it's doing what they've always done best, which is curate and look for ways to provide what's best for our students in Broken Arrow.
Well, first of all, the work of you ladies, phenomenal. I mean, we as district leaders can't thank you enough, but more importantly, I think our students and our teachers can't thank you enough, because you bravely went where no one has gone before. No, but seriously, you provided a resource that not only saves money, but when you talk about leadership and how it grows from just a local thing to where if you're a reader of tribal leadership, it's called the Level 5 leader. And the Level 5 leader means that you build things and you openly share them with anyone free of charge, because it's the right thing to do. And because that's what we want for our neighboring districts, what we want for all children, is to have access to quality resources like these. So for that, I truly thank you, and we just appreciate you so much. We couldn't do it without you.
Our mantra is knowledge should be free. So
absolutely.
Definitely.
I'd also like to thank you all. I love the innovative aspect of it, where we have people from the other states coming to Broken Arrow instead of us going out looking for that new way of educating. And I think that's what Broken Arrow should be from top to bottom. We can be the leaders in the state and the ones where everybody from out of state comes in and wants to know what those little secrets that's going on at Broken Arrow. And thank you all for all your hard work and dedication for making that happen. And 27 people obviously think that we're doing something right here, and are appreciative of what you're doing as well, even if it's purely cost savings for them. So I mean it, but thank you all very much for what you do. I appreciate that. Next item number 89, Mr. Stout.
Thank you, Dr. Dunlop, President Allen, members of the board. Item number 89 is seeking approval for the purchase of several Avaya phone systems and also phone sets. It includes the new configuration for Timber Ridge, also several other configurations, Broken Arrow High School, Sequoia Middle School, Comm and Maintenance Center, and also transportation. Seeking your approval. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Go ahead.
Any questions?
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson.
Yes.
Mr. Denton.
Yes.
Ms. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Next item, number 90, Mr. Stout.
Item number 90 is seeking approval to purchase a server, replace a server that we have in place. It's over 5 years old. I'm happy to answer any questions on the server.
Mr. Stout, what's the life expectancy of a server?
5 years.
That's it?
Well, I wouldn't risk it any longer than
Okay.
that. It would put the district at risk.
Well, it ain't very long for that amount of money.
This actually supports 30 servers. It's a big server, but it has 30 smaller servers that run on it. So,
Any questions, discussion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson.
Yes.
Mr. Denton.
Yes.
Ms. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Stout. Next item, business services, number 91, Ms. Enoff.
Good evening again. Talked a lot about the budget tonight. Briefly, we'll go over where we are to date. You can see the lag in revenue now in our state aid. Our ad valorem, luckily, is holding strong for us, and in the other state sources of revenue where we've been cut in areas such as PD, ACE remediation, textbooks, all of those areas have been cut from us. Building fund revenue, again, ad valorem is our main source of revenue in this fund. It's a very small protected fund for what we pay utilities, a few salaries and benefits, but with our main source of revenue being ad valorem and very small at that, in January those funds go very quickly. Child nutrition revenue is holding steady across the board from where we were last year. We're very lucky to have a very self-sufficient and successful child nutrition program to where they're self-sustaining and supporting of themselves. The other crystal ball prediction in this, when we're looking at our ending fund balance, will obviously just be where we end the year with just our normal course of business in expenditures and salaries and benefits and our outside vendor obligations. We put a moratorium on spending pretty much for the regular course of business in April. Obviously, we're still doing summer maintenance things, summer school programs and things like that are continuing, but for the normal everyday course of business, we are trying to look at those expenditures very carefully so we can get an idea of where we're going to be at the end of the year. Building fund, again, we did decide to move some expenditures in the salaries and benefits area to try and equalize our general fund a little bit. And child nutrition, again, they pay for all of their own salaries and benefits, workers' comp, food purchases, supplies, everything comes out of child nutrition that is directly related to that program. So again, we are monitoring our final expenditures very closely to see what our ending fund balance will be. I have never wanted to be wrong about something so much in my life as in regards to where the budget is going to be for next year. I hope that our legislators have the courage to present a realistic and self-sustaining budget going into next year. And, you know, we have prepared for the worst, but we will see where we land in the next coming weeks. Any further questions I can answer?
Questions? Thank you, Ms. Ena. Next item, number 92, Ms. Dolahan.
Good evening. I'm here to give you the Treasurer's Report as of the end of April. Cash balance report shows a total of $71,667,000 in assets for the district. Included in this figure are investments that total $59,590,000. Our fund security and deposit report shows a total of $46,459,000 in collateral pledged to the district. Our deposits that require collateral total $22,351,000, which leaves an available balance of collateral in the amount of $24,108,000.
Questions? Next item, number 93, Ms. Dolahan.
In the activity funds at the end of April, the receipts for the year at the end of April total $6,413,000. Our disbursements total $5,560,000, leaving an ending cash balance in the activity funds of $3,184,000.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, number 94, Ms. Metabalis.
Good evening. My first item tonight is the change order report. We have a decrease of $72,913.01 for change orders April 5th through May 3rd.
Questions, discussion?
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, number 95.
Next item are the encumbrance reports for all funds from April 6th through May 4th. We have encumbrance orders totaling $2,199,162.63.
Questions?
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Thank you. Next item, number 96, new business, seeing as there is none. Next item, number 97, would be executive session.
Move to go into executive session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to executive session. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Thank you.